everybody. Thanks for coming after lunch. Glad you could make it. My name is Janis Johnson. I'm with Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. I'm in marketing. And this is Eddie McKenna, trader, went to Massachusetts, a month or two ago? And Eddie was the lead on this campaign that we're going to talk about. And our marketing director retired, our analyst on this campaign, our analyst retired, our email person left for a .com type company, and Eddie went to Massachusetts. So last woman standing gets to present this. So I got notes, but Eddie is well familiar with the campaign, and when he was at TPWTD, sitting next to me for 7 years, I called him my shell answer man, because any question I ever had up until 2 months ago, Eddie always knew the answer, and especially if it was about fishing. So I'm honored that he agreed to co-present with me today. So we're going to split it up, and hopefully you'll learn something that will be helpful for you. Okay, so let's get to it. Retaining new anglers in the COVID area. So I'll move the slide too. Yeah. So this was an effort targeted to retain new anglers. And really, if you think about it, they were lapsed anglers, so this probably is better called a reactivation campaign. But I'm just going to keep saying renewals. And we're excited to share with you today the positive results that we were able to achieve. And we think it's a good template for ongoing investment, at least for us. We hope it will be on future campaigns, and which you might find useful as well. And I do have to say thank you, RBFF, for the grant that you gave us, which allowed us to do this, because, you know, the truth is, not everything is big in Texas. Our budgets are not big. So when we get a grant like this from RBFF, it makes a big impact on learning, and revenue. So we're really grateful for that and encourage all of you to apply for grants. Okay, just a quick background. So we're talking about the early pandemic days, March through August of 2020. And so when we looked at these people, we found that 43% of all fishing licenses purchased during the early pandemic days were first-time buyers. And we consider a first-time buyer somebody who has not purchased a license in the past 5 years, okay? Because that's about as far as we want to go back. If you haven't purchased a license in 5 years, we're going to talk to you like you're new again. Also, 45%, or almost half of the customers who provided an email address for us during this period were also first-time purchasers. So this was about 100,000 new emails that we acquired, which is great news, because we only started requiring emails about 2 years ago. And we'd ask and ask for years and years and years. So if you're still asking, make it a requirement, because now we have a lot more people we can talk to and remind, to buy licenses or whatever. So a year from purchase was the license, an all-water, we have saltwater and freshwater. These were the type licenses that most of the people bought. It is our most expensive license. It's $47 a year for the all-water, and they're valid for 12 months from the date of purchase. So that was just a little bit of background. So we all know what a large influx of new anglers we got. I think most of us did, that were gained during the early days of the pandemic. People wanted to get outside. They thought maybe it was safer outside. They could take their mask off outside. They could not be cooped up in the house with everybody for an hour or so. So we know, the pandemic contributed, but we don't like to give the pandemic all of the credit. I don't think any of us should. We do a lot of communications and marketing to talk to these anglers and get new people in the door, but certainly COVID helped. And since we got all these new anglers, we wanted to do our best to retain them, and which is also why RBFF's grants last year were retention focused. Let's see what we can do to keep these people. So given these circumstances, we figured these new anglers were at high risk of not renewing and would contribute to our already high churn rate of 40% a year. It's that leaky bucket syndrome. Okay, so the objective of the campaign was to generate renewals from these expired licensees at a higher rate than if we didn't do this marketing I'm going to tell you about. So we wanted to see if we could make an impact on the renewal rate. The target audience, as mentioned, were these first-time COVID anglers. They had expired licenses and they purchased early on. And they mostly purchased year-from purchase licenses, but many of them just bought a 1-day or 2-day, 3-day. So we're going to focus on the YFP because those were the majority, and they also were the most profitable for us. Leaky bucket. Okay, so top line, the treatments we did were we used digital online ads with email. Then we used digital only, digital advertising on Facebook. And then we tested email only. And then we kept a control group out to the side so we could see what lift these emails or ads may have given us. So we have the ability to reach, most of our anglers directly because we get their contact information from their license purchases. But I don't know about you, again, the not everything's big in Texas thing. Direct mail is expensive. Telemarketing is so 1990s. Everybody has cell phones. Try to get those numbers. We can't text without an opt-in. And our emails average about 23% on a good day open rate. So we know we're not reaching everybody. So we decided to test using the email, the Facebook advertising, and a combination of both, again, to see if we could get a little lift to the campaign. So basically, we just timing-wise, it was a short campaign. We launched the advertising in June. We sent out retention emails in July. We added some new ads into the rotation in July, and we ended in July. So it was a short campaign, but we were able to get some results. So let's take a look at these results. So this is the treatment group A, only email. So again, the license type was year from purchase. We sent it to about 4,200 email recipients. The purchase rate from this group was 12.89%, which is good for us. It accounted for $25,000 plus in revenue. So then we look at the next column over, license purchases by control group. The control group, who received no ads, no emails, bought at a pretty healthy 7.82%. So we subtract that from the test treatment group, 12.89, and we get a lift of 5.07%, which our data analyst figured was attributable revenue of about $16,000. Okay. And, we also kind of learned, again, looking at profitability, that the YFP produced most of the measurable return on the campaign as opposed to the 1-day all water, which actually did not generate a return. So this learning, is going to help us kind of think about, well, which tactic are we going to use to target different people? So online advertising is not free, so we're going to probably, relegate that to the people who buy a more expensive license, whereas your 1-day buyers, 2-day buyers, they're going to get email because we just, don't really need to be spending that much money on them. So the next treatment group was digital advertising only, okay? And our pool of people was about 63,000 plus people. Their purchase rate of the licenses was 8.36%. accounting for $250,000 in revenue. You'll notice that number, 63,000 people were reached versus with email only, it was about 4,000 people. And the control group was the same, rate, the 7.82%. So the lift was 0.54. You may say, oh, well, that's so little. And it was less than email, but it was enough to generate revenue, $17,000 plus in revenue. And that is digital advertising only. And then for the last treatment group and the winning treatment group, we use digital advertising and email. Okay, so you can see here we reached about 10,000 recipients. We got a almost 13% purchase rate, revenue. Revenue was about $62,000. Again, the static 7.82 for the control group, which gave us a lift of over 5%, and an attributable revenue of $41,000. So although the email wasn't the winning group, it still was cost effective to use email only. Of course, you're talking to your own customers in this case, but the best sort of treatment, the best grouping was the digital ads plus the email. This is just a quick look at the control group. I don't know about y'all, we had a little problem. The first column or second column, total recipients, they don't quite add up. Does anybody ever have that with their data where it doesn't quite add up? Never happens, right? But we were told at first there were 20,000 customer IDs, but when we ran the data, we came up with 23,409. All of this just to say, you're gonna get some discrepancies with your numbers. But we did have quite a few people checking it twice and trying to explain it to us. But we are big believers of using a control group just so you can measure the impact of your tests. Otherwise, you won't really know, how much better you're doing. And Eddie's going to talk a little bit more about control groups. If you can't keep a control group, some other things that you might be able to do. So just to summarize, the digital ads and the email performed the best, followed by the email-only treatment group. The digital ads performed the worst, but still generated a positive lift, 0.54%, and revenue, so that's good, we're making money on it. Email-only, as mentioned, performed second best, and the control group was outperformed by all of the treatment groups. So, we can look at, expanding it and reaching out to more people next time. Again, with your tests, they're smaller numbers. And also, if we keep in mind that this campaign ran during the license year, following one in which many people tried fishing for the first time, and you know how it is, sometimes you try things one time and you're like, I don't really like it. Didn't really work for me. So still, it was pretty good response rates just after the first year that they had ever fished. So next, Eddie, former TPWD marketing person, as mentioned, and I'll never let him forget it. He's going to talk about the creative and some of the observations on the creative that we used in the campaign and some of the recommendations going forward. Eddie, I love this guy.
Thank you, Janis. Kind words. Hello, everyone. I'm Eddie McKenna, formerly Texas Parks and Wildlife, currently Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife. So far, so good. The basics of the campaign, we have a couple of treatment groups compared against a control group. One of the group got emails and digital advertising. One of the groups got email only. One of the groups got digital advertising only. And we've attempted to document along the way and measure our results to date. Janis mentioned a year from purchase license. For those of you out there who think of 365-day, that's like Texas's version of 365-day. It's one type of fishing license that we offer. And the further away you are from our, air quotes, normal license year, the more valuable that one becomes to anglers. And it's 1 day for all water. So just, again, for background. A few more numbers, and then we'll get into the creative. Our total campaign budget was supplemented by an investment from within the state, in addition to a generous grant from Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation. A portion of it, of course, went to creative development and working with our advertising agency of record. The deliverables are what we're about to see with our own eyes, and as Janis mentioned, it was quite a tight flight date, beginning, truthfully, as soon as we could launch, which ended up being June, due to some data-related challenges. And then we finished on the 31st of July because, again, the Texas normal, air quotes, license year starts again August the 14th, and at that point, the customer would be better served just by waiting and buying a different license type that they could get just by waiting 2 more weeks. So we ended the campaign then. Conversions to purchase were our main success metric. We were deliberately diverse and inclusive with our imagery. We tested a variety of ad creative, either focused on friends versus time with family, and we studied the results as they came in and optimized on the basis of what our target audience thought they'd like to click through to. Again, the call to action always to renew a fishing license. There are 10 of these, so I'll keep coming through. Again, a mix of Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation library images and those that we created ourselves or those that had performed well in past campaigns. The gentleman on the left is actually a volunteer who met a coworker of ours in an airplane and was invited out with kids to fish and said, I'd love to. So it's amazing what the power of volunteerism can do, even for just getting the perfect photo at the perfect place. Again, a mixture of sort of friends spending time with one another and family spending time with one another. We, in terms of copy-wise, you can see people trying to get a little bit cuter, like it's a twofer versus something a little bit more straightforward, just that, you're having a lot of fun fishing, please renew your license. Just a very, for lack of a better word, uncreative approach, but just much more deliberate, easy to digest if you're scrolling through. Again, this is kind of the second to last set of ads we run, in this case, child-free young adults. And we accompanied these with a couple of pieces of email marketing specific to this campaign. As you heard from Jennifer this morning and others, this is not the only thing we do. It's a true alphabet soup. It's a true hodgepodge of efforts all working together. But specific to this campaign and this grant, we sent 2 emails, one shortly before the 4th of July weekend, and one shortly after, again with that call to action to renew one's license. Here's a quick overview of all of the results besides the main ones that we're studying. How much we spent, how many impressions we generated, how many clicks went straight through, how many direct purchases took place. But this isn't really the main data set that I think we should be looking at here that we want to emphasize. Without being able to attribute all of this to our campaign, but comparing the specific dates in 2021 versus that same period in the previous year, we're up by a factor of 3%. It's a lot more than 0, and it's not specifically necessarily attributable to this campaign, but we thought it was significant enough that we wanted to include those findings. Creatively speaking, we learned that focusing on making memories was the best approach, just sort of appealing to one's nostalgia, and including members of a real or perceived family also ended up performing better than the adult friends on their own. In terms of media platforms, we've learned that as many of you guys have probably experienced firsthand, Facebook has changed its attribution window, and they track all the post-click and post-impression conversions, but basically we learned that limiting ourselves to this narrower focus audience, in this case the COVID anglers, the specific folks that we were trying to retain, made us probably end up serving up our advertising at higher frequencies, so with a slightly lower return on investment than it would if we had made a larger audience on purpose. The final finding, and Janis alluded to this also, is that the year from purchase fishing license type, also called a 365-day by some of you folks, it costs more per purchase than the one-day all-water fishing license type. So we learned that if we are trying to make a return on investment in this way, it makes sense to focus on the license types that are at a price point that would be likely to generate one. Otherwise, we can email or communicate in other ways. For the purposes of the audience here and for our fellow states, who have various, variations on the way the license system and the structures are set up in this one, not everybody can do a test versus a control group. Either the size is too small already, you just can't set aside, in our case, 20,000 people to be a control group, or in some cases, methodologically, it doesn't lend itself well to having a test versus a control setup. So if you can't do that, and we might consider this as well in years ahead, go ahead and expand your target audience. These are basically all the things that you can do if you don't use a control group, or if you're not trying to keep your findings, statistically significant in that way. You can just open it on up, add the lookalikes, let the audience expansion go, do some remarketing to those who showed some interest but didn't follow through to convert to purchase, and to consider an entirely different platform as well. As you can see, we didn't use Google products in this campaign, but certainly people would be open to considering that. Their attribution window remains longer versus Facebook's, which is contracted, so you can potentially either generate a return or at least get full credit for what the impact might have been of who saw what. Many in this audience are probably already familiar with how the Google suite of options is structured, but ad creative-wise, no major insights to to recommend, as well, RBFF has mentioned this before, and some others as well. There are any number of, Tapestry is one example, but you can run your existing customers through audience segmentation tools and find out a whole lot more about them and their interests. And something else we didn't do as part of this campaign, but we could have and may in the future, is geo-targeting. Just focus on people who are in or near a given body of water and see if you can't offer them the chance to buy a fishing license. Craig, early this morning, mentioned the neighborhood fishing lakes and ponds of the state that are stocked regularly, that have easy access from pier and bank, good lighting, car parking, bathrooms, and are in or around the major places of the state where most people live. There are 5 of them in Greater Dallas-Fort Worth, for example. And that could be a future opportunity, I think, in any state that has something comparable to offer. As I mentioned, we didn't do this in a vacuum, and I'm sure nobody else in this room does either. There's other emails that need to be sent. There's other social media that needs to be posted, organically or otherwise. So, by no means would you want to treat one opportunity as just that alone unto itself. I'd like to pass the microphone back over to Janis to finish this up, and then we'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Eddie. Okay. Oh, there it is. So, Frank Peterson, former CEO of RBFF, told me several years ago that we, the agencies, are the ones who should be taking care of customer retention because we are the ones with the relationship with the customers, and that RBFF would function more in an acquisition or recruitment. And we saw that today, the upcoming campaigns. We looked at the past campaigns. So if we're best to work on reducing churn, we need to be doing it all the time. And so we've really made an effort, particularly with these COVID anglers, but even before, to focus on retention. And one thing I just wanted to share, we shared it a couple of years ago at an RBFF seminar, but we did a series of first-timer emails, and we send their heavy graphics, short copy, lots of links, and maybe 5 different copy blocks. So there's 3 emails. We send them all out in about 5 weeks. We got to tell them again, get them while they're interested. So we call them our onboarding or welcoming series. And, we've been doing it for a couple of years now, and the open rates are, 40%, 50%. The engagement rates are very high if you put a lot of juicy links in there for them to click on. So we're very happy. We also do that with our hunting audiences. And again, I think it impacted our churn rates. We also created a landing page just for first-timers. Real easy. You just take all the links and most of the graphics out of these emails and put it in a landing page. So it was our agency URL /new2 fishing or something like that. And we've gotten quite a good visitation on that page as well, because people lose emails real easily. So in the emails, we refer them to the landing page. And then after they get the 3 emails, the welcoming, onboarding emails, we put them into our stream of other emails. And that includes a Fish Texas e-newsletter, and then special topics like white-hot winter fishing. We don't people in Texas, you can fish pretty much all year round. So we got to keep talking to them. So they get about 7 or 8 emails a year. And we sometimes look at doing more, and then we decide we're doing too many. So we need to start measuring, and just to see what that sweet spot would be. But so far, so good at about 7 to 8 emails a year. And then also, when it comes time to renew, we have some tailored renewal notices to them. And I think Craig mentioned we had done a test of soft sell versus hard sell. The hard sell version is the one up there. Big letters, expiration notice, this is to inform you that da-da-da. Whereas the mushy one was, gee, we'd love for you to, the hard sell one. And we tested that for a year, and it consistently beat out the softer sell. So that's what we've been doing for retention. And, not to forget everything else you do at your agency, all the other communications vehicles. We have a homepage that we often switch out the hero up at the top of the page on the main web page, and we talk about licenses being on sale and several other ideas, but that's your property too, on your agency's website. We use social media a lot. We do print ads in our magazine. Our magazine also has an online presence, and we do blogs. We have a TV show, and of course, they're always writing and having episodes on fishing or what the hatcheries are doing, or new science, or problem with carp, or biggest bass, and all of that good stuff. So yeah, that's about what we do with retention and how we work to retain the new COVID anglers that came in during 2020. And with that, we'll just open it up to any questions. For Eddie. Go ahead.
Hey.
Yes.
This is Eric from Maryland. One quick question. Was this only in English? An English only campaign?
Hi, Eric from Maryland. Yes, this campaign was in English. We have done campaigns that are bilingual in the past, in English and in Spanish, but this was not one of them. As Janis mentioned, it was essentially a retention campaign, and we were trying to specifically measure the whole, like, oh, wouldn't they have just come back anyway factor, hence the test versus control. I suppose we could have tried something in Spanish for this one, but truthfully, it would be some other campaign that is not this retention focused that might be better served in Spanish, in my opinion. We do provide customer service in Spanish, over the phone, in person where able, and on portions of our website. So at the customers, or for that matter, to answer questions on social media. But in terms of the way this particular advertising campaign was structured, we did not have a way of including Spanish.
Well, we didn't know if they spoke Spanish either. We don't really have a CRM, customer relationship database. So from our email list, we really can't tell if they speak Spanish or not. Yeah, on the front end, the outdoor annual,
Right, our
state
regulations
park
are also
guide,
available in Spanish.
The regulations are. We've got website pages, but that's more for bringing them in.
So if that's a good enough short answer, no for this campaign, but yes for basic customer service and overall holistic efforts.
Yes.
Two-part question, because my second part might not be applicable depending on the answer to the first part. In your control group that you set aside, there were people who bought the annual year-round license and then the single-day license. Was that true for everybody you sampled?
Yes.
Okay. So in that, did you pull any data, like people who bought single-day licenses and then received this marketing campaign? Did you see an increase in people buying just from that single day 1 year to a full year the next year at all? Or did you not look at that kind of data?
Do you mind if I take that one, Janis?
No,
or do
go
you
right
want to?
ahead. Yep.
All right, so if I understand the question correctly, and I'll avoid backing up on the slides to document this, there's a bunch of different fishing license types in Texas, truthfully, including the combination ones that are hunting and fishing in various forms. We have a very large body of salt water. We have 9 nautical miles out to sea that are considered state waters, which is unique among the states. Blah, 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 all that to say, there were only 2 fishing license types we included. One of them was what we call year from purchase, and one of them was called the one-day all water. The reason we didn't include any of the other ones is that they were tethered to the license year that begins September the 1st and ends the following August. And so the vast majority of people who would have wanted or benefited from those other fishing license types would have already bought it or should wait until a couple of weeks later where they can get it again when the cycle starts over again. So to answer Andre's question, I don't think we could say whether or to what extent anyone who had bought the one-day all water got some of this information and then bought the year from purchase larger license type. All we could say for certain was that based on the cost per unit, the folks who had the one-day all water, we shouldn't have been advertising to them in that way because it was not going to produce a return. We should have focused on those other license types, basically. And if we had run this campaign at a different time of the year, we could have included even more of our various and sundry fishing license types. It's confusing even to locals, is the truth. And I just hope everyone is able to find the right match that fits their needs. I hope that helps answer the question, Andre.
Hi, I'm Emily Apicelli from S3. You may have mentioned it, and I might have missed it in the beginning, but did the campaign go out just to those first-time COVID anglers, or was it, in general, your lapsed anglers?
It was lapsed anglers who had reactivated during what we defined as the COVID era.
Okay.
A period of 2020, a particular period of 2020.
They came in during March to August of 2020. So yeah, we were targeting them with the online and the email.
And again, this is not we do other things as well, but this is specific to this campaign. That was kind of the scope, and that was the target audience.
Okay, my name's Chelsea from Maine Inland Fish and Wildlife, and I have a question that's somewhat pertained to this, but as a newbie to inland fish and wildlife, is there a particular reason why you guys don't do the calendar year for your licensing? And that you said, I've heard you mention multiple different start dates for seasons. Why is that? And maybe if anyone else does that in their state, I would love to know why.
I can answer really broadly. It's just sort of like all politics, or sometimes it has to do with a legislative decision. As Jennifer mentioned, her state in Tennessee recently transitioned from one into the other because based on the overwhelming feedback from their constituents, they liked it that way better. Certainly in Texas, we've considered it. In Massachusetts, it is a calendar year license for all the license types, January to January. And in Texas, it corresponds with the fiscal year of the state. And you mentioned seasonality. It usually has to do with the start of certain hunting game species seasons.
Right.
Dove at the beginning, and then eastern turkey or some of the other spring turkey ones at the end. So it's kind of arbitrary, truthfully.
But we are looking as part of R3, one of our cross-program goals is to look at our types of license. Maybe we need a family license, to look at that and also to look at the timing. So the licensing people, of course, push back, but we're going to keep pushing too. It took us years to finally encourage them to require email addresses with a license purchase. And the fact that that didn't happen, 20 years ago, we now have millions of emails. Yeah, and we all know that's, pretty cost effective. Our open rates are higher than industry average, and, probably sink a little bit. But 25% open them, so, we have to do other things as well. Social media, web, online advertising if you can afford it or get a grant.
Just looking at our time, Joanne, how are we for questions and answers?
We've got about 7 more minutes.
Oh,
So I was
wonderful.
going to see if we have any virtual questions.
Anyways, we have 7 minutes and we have 2 online questions, so thank you so far. The first question, there we go. The first question is, what was your ad spend for this campaign?
One moment, please.
I thought we weren't going back on slides,
Right,
Eddie.
I said I'd never go backward, only forward.
29 media?
Our total ad spend was just shy of $30,000 to answer the question, and the remaining money went into creative development and a very elaborate process of safe, secure, but effective data sharing and study.
And agency fees, we used an ad agency with
Right.
us. We use the agencies definitely for any of the online advertising, we have to. And we appreciate their expertise. Somebody would ask the question this morning about, well, how do you know whether to do this or that or this or that? It's, well, having an agency helps because
Right.
they do it all day long.
We, again, tried to separate out how much, we just said what we spent, but also how much we brought in. And there's a larger number that's total amount of revenue,
$74,000.
$74,000 in attributable revenue, and we have a formula for how we calculated that, which is available, I believe, in the case study document as well as in the long-form version of our grant report. But if you wanted to see an even larger number, we spent $30,000 and brought in almost $400,000. The smaller number is just what we think we can prove.
Thank you very much. Our second question is from Gina, and she asks, how do you focus your digital advertising to a specific angler or customer ID? They've done a digital marketing campaign and have focused on a geographic area, but not necessarily previous licensed anglers. So she's curious how you had the ad focus to that specific group.
Would you like to take this one, Janice,
No,
or
go
you
ahead.
mind if I take it?
No, go ahead.
We were able to focus it
Privacy
because we
policy.
have our customers' data. And we want to keep that private, protected, unexploited, not shared with third parties. But at the same time, it's part of our job and part of the nature of the work to try to encourage fishing participation. So with access to our own customer data, we can create targeted campaigns within some of these online platforms that reach them directly without compromising their identities or without anybody's data being leaked or breached or lost into the open.
And if you were to
Sounds like the
focus
data's key.
geographically, you might be looking more for prospects. But we had their names, and as
Right.
mentioned, we didn't want to direct mail, we're not going to telemarket. We can email them,
Yeah.
but we added on the online advertising because we had the names, and we gave them to the agency who gave them to Facebook, and they were not anonymized. They were the actual names so that we knew they were going to get fed the ads. And we did have some issues with match rates with Facebook, our customer names to their database, which we won't go into, but yeah, there were some issues there.
I hope
We
that
love
answers the
Facebook.
question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Gotta
Those
love
were
it.
the only two that we have on the virtual side, so thank you.
All right, well, yeah.
So who's going to apply for an RBFF grant and be my competition next year? Anybody? Oh, I see nobody's.
Congratulations.
All right, great.
right.
Congratulations.
We'll see you next year up on stage.
Yeah.
I do have one final question. I know some states, after they, know a marketing strategy or tactic works, they tend to forego the control group in order to then have broader reach to that control group. Do you guys plan, at least with these tactics, to continue to have the control group?
We will.
Yeah.
We will. We've had a control group on our email campaigns for 2 years.
Okay.
We've got a group that we just don't email them, and we see.
Sure.
I don't know if we've measured them lately, but I know we're not emailing them.
Gotcha.
Did you want to add to that?
Oh, only that, I could guess that the majority of the people in this room work with a lot of natural scientists who value data and who appreciate detailed description of methodologies. And so if you can present some of this stuff as social science, which it is, it doesn't seem nearly as ephemeral to them. And it's nice to be able to have as much working data as you can to demonstrate, numerically the value of what's working, even if that's not the only point. It's nice to have something behind it.
It's like-
Having said that, Janice, I'd be surprised. I would envision some scenario where you might decide to forego the control group if you wanted an approach that reached an even bigger audience. So
we don't
maybe it
need
depends
it.
on the campaign.
We don't need it. We got a lot of people in Texas, so, but when I first heard we were going to use online advertising to reach customers, I'm like, why would you waste your money with paid advertising to reach customers? And again, now we know. Not everybody opens the email or gets the direct mail, et cetera.
Right.
So,
Great. Well, it's just about 2:15, so I want to thank you both, Janice and Eddie, very, very much for your work on this, the presentation. We will have a case study out on this in the coming weeks as well, so you'll be able to see the results there. And as Eddie mentioned, there's a full report if you want all the nitty-gritty details.